someone kicking or punching on the front or a mean face.
Hi, Gus. Thank you for jumping in on the podcast. I think the best question will be what's cooking?
Thanks, Les. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm a real big fan of the free content you put on, and especially like the guests you have on for your podcast and everything. So it's a real privilege to be on.
Thank you.
Um,
So,
so
what
yes,
is
I
cooking?
so what is cooking? Yeah, that was the idea. Obviously, you've written many books and you've probably read many martial art books, and they have a tendency to follow a very similar. I'm not saying that every book's content is the same, but they tend to look the same. Either someone kicking or punching on the front or a mean face. And I just didn't want to do the same thing. So I always try and use analogies when teaching, maybe music or driving's another big one, but cooking for me is a great one. And as both you and I are big fans of forms and kata, we know that knowing a million kata doesn't mean you can defend yourself, much like having recipe books or even the ability to write down recipe books does not mean you're an amazing chef. So it was this contrast between trying to make the forms functional in systems where traditionally they could be called 3K karate or they could be called, karate for competition or kata for competition. I just wanted to bridge that gap with my students, and again, like you share with the community, I just wanted to share my thoughts with everyone else and start a discussion going.
Amazing. Can we start from your background? I've been listening to you on a Kicking with Chris, I think, podcast. And you are a Tang Soo Do practitioner, right? So kind
Yes,
of Korean roots. Can you take us through how did you get involved in the martial arts and so on?
yeah. So when I was very young, my dad introduced me to a lot of martial art movies, the classics, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Sonny Chiba, and I always wanted to to bridge the gap to becoming a superhero. And I thought martial arts was the way to do it. Like Batman knew martial arts, so I was like, right, well, I need to learn martial arts. And when I was 5 or 6, I tried out at school, and I never mean to badmouth this school. I just know they weren't in gis and suits.
Mm.
So it was a stand-up style, and basically I went for 3 lessons, and the bigger kids just beat up the littler kids, and I learned absolutely nothing. And I just the Karate Kid film had come out, and I just thought, oh, that's real. And unless I found like a Mr. Miyagi or had private tuition from an old Okinawan master, then I would never learn properly. And I just completely abandoned exercise, abandoned martial arts, and went, well, that's not for me. And again, not to be a sob story or whatever, but when I was younger, I had brain damage, I had dyspraxia, I had meningitis, and I found out recently that I also at that time had a stroke. So coordination things, these things were very, very difficult for me. And I found sports and things very difficult to begin with. Cut to 5 years later, my little brother, he's in the same position as me. He's 6. He wants to do a martial art. We've moved town. It's a new leisure centre, new instructor. And back in the day before the internet, you would just walk into your local leisure centre and whatever was there, you'd take it up. And it happened to be Tang Soo Do. We'd never heard of it. But the instructor was amazing. My mum came to me after a couple of weeks of my brother being there and being like, no, you should definitely try it again. This is different from the school you tried. It's not the same. The instructor's amazing. The club's amazing. So I went along very skeptical at first. And after one lesson, I was just obsessed. And it was the first time in my life that I realized if I worked really hard at something, I could be okay at it. I could be good at it. And the club was really supportive, and the instructor was, and I and I and I say that I love Tang Soo Do, but what I really loved was that club and that instructor. Because I could have walked into another Tang Soo Do school where the instructor wasn't like that, the club wasn't like that. So I never tell people that Tang Soo Do is the best thing in the world. I always tell people it's not the style, it's the instructor and it's the atmosphere of the club and the ethos of the club and things like that, which I know you heartily agree with. So it's always nice
Mm.
to when you meet people and talk to them, you realize that that's a similar story for them as well.
Yeah, yeah. It seems to be across the board that, people follow the instructors instead of the styles. But you just heighten up my level of respect to you, learning that you had a brain injury and dyspraxia, and you are doing those videos with you jumping, doing like a very complicated and very coordinated stuff, which is very motivating. I'm not the kicking person. My body is not designed to kicks, but seeing how much effort you put in those videos, and just the consistency you've got and the improvements that coming with it, it's a huge respect to you. Um, but how did you overcome the problems of coordination and dyspraxia? The reason I'm asking, I don't know if you know Don Kame.
Yeah, no, Don Kane. Yeah,
He suffered with dyspraxia as well, and karate helped him to kind of balance things out. He's still clumsy, but
yeah.
uh, how was that going for you? Did the martial arts help you with coordination and stuff? What you feel?
So I wasn't diagnosed with dyspraxia until I was about 12, I think, starting comprehensive school. And again, I just thought I was a clumsy child, as you know, a lot of people would say back then. And my parents took the very strong view that I should work on my coordination. So as well as doing martial arts, I was also learning how to drum, and that helped
Hmm.
with fine motor coordination, things like that. And I found that it would take me a lot longer to learn a skill, like a lot longer. Like I was very slow, but I found that when I did learn it, it really stuck in my head. And again, I tell all my kids that I teach that I'm not really teaching you how to punch and kick. I'm teaching you how to learn.
Hmm.
Because if you can learn your individual way of learning, you're going to succeed in life. If you're constantly, and again, I think martial arts schools were a lot more guilty of this back in the day, but there was like this one size fits all. Why aren't you punching like everyone else? Why aren't you doing like everyone else? And now my approach to teaching and my instructor's approach was like, right, you're not getting it this way. Let's try learning it a different way. So it taught me about patience. It taught me about anything else, and I would just work on it non-stop. Like you said a lovely compliment about the kicks. I found those kicks very difficult. I was not a flexible person when I started. I couldn't touch my toes. Everything hurt when I did things, and I just loved it so much that I just wanted to get better at it. And at
Hmm.
age 38, I finally achieved box splits, after training for like 20 years or something like that. So these things I always tell my students is goes, it took me a very long time to work this stuff out. I'm trying to help you, whatever you want to do with your martial arts, I'm just trying to help you get there quicker and more efficiently and less painfully.
That's very interesting because I'm nearly 30 years in martial arts and I still can't go anywhere low to even call it a box split. I'm like half a meter away. And every
Yeah.
time when I do a stretching routine, it's not the muscles, it's just my bones hurting. So I kind of gave up. And then one of the physicians told me that I've got the closed hips. So my socket is very rounded and is catching it. So it's not kind of a muscles. But when I'm aging, I'm feeling that muscles start contributing to it now because they're very, very, very getting tightened. What is your routine and how often you stretching and what type of stretching do you do PNS, you do dynamic, or what's
I,
your
I
what's
do.
your way?
I do every kind of stretching these days. Again, when I started, and again, I keep using this like back in the day, we all did the same, but I don't know what everyone did. My experience with stretching was it was the same, similar warm up, similar stretching, and what I would call it, you're trying to do the glamorous stretches.
Mhm.
So like, touching your toes, front splits, forward folds, and things that look good but are not balanced. Like one of the things I say about Tang Soo Do is like the flag and the tiger, the yin yang is like balance. So for example, if you're lifting weights and you do your biceps, you need to do your triceps as well.
Mhm.
And this is what I was saying. We were doing a lot of hip opening stretches, but we weren't doing the hip TLC, the things like
Mhm.
pigeon stretch and the glute stretches. So one of the things that I started doing about 10, maybe 12 years ago is I started doing yoga because
Mhm.
I, like you, was constantly injured. I was just injured all the time. And I would do the classes, but I'd come out like limping, or I'd even have to step to the side because I was training so hard. And I was like, I can't keep doing this. I have to fix this because I don't want to bust myself up. So about 10 years ago, I started taking the yoga seriously, and I didn't go to a class or anything. I would just watch good old YouTube videos and follow along and everything like that. And I found that I was injured a lot less. I was a lot more flexible, a lot stronger, and I found it so hard to begin with the yoga. And then
Mhm.
from the yoga, I started looking at, like you say, PNF stretching, dynamic movements, mobility training. And now, just this morning before this interview, I do what I call loaded mobility, where
Mhm.
I treat my stretching like weightlifting. So it's like I'm going through the range of motions. I'm doing deeper range of motions with heavier weights, longer sets, more sets. and I probably do yoga every day, and obviously I stretch for my students, and then I'll do the loaded mobility serious about um, twice a week, and then once a week I'll do like a range of kicks with very slowly with like leg weights on. So I'm
Mhm.
going through those range of motion just so I can do it. So yeah, stretching something that the thing that people like doing the least, but I'd say out of all my training, I probably stretch the most because again, what I say to people when I'm teaching them is going, like a lot of clubs go, we do self-defense and we learn how to protect yourself, but you might go through your whole life never needing to defend yourself in that way, but you've got to live with yourself every day. You've got to get out of the bed. You've got to walk up. You don't want to stiff back and things like that. So I tell people all the time, I'm teaching you 5% probably self-defense and 95% self-preservation. You want to be able to walk down the street with not a crooked back or aching all the time. And I've said I've had very few sort of serious injuries over the last 10 years, which is really, I'm really lucky. I know that.
Mhm. Funny you mentioned that because I love this. We actually been having seminar with Brian Bates yesterday, Saturday, and I was explaining, breaking break falls and rolls and flexibility, and actually exactly saying the same thing that martial arts you might use, but the ability to move you're gonna use definitely every day. That's a quote from my friend, badly translated from Polish to English. But I totally agree with you. You using your body every day. You might fight on the street once in 10, 20 years, but to get up from the toilet or from the bed, you're gonna have to use it every day, right? Before we're gonna go into the book, what was the impact of martial arts on your mental health? Was it positive or how that
100%.
come about?
I tell people all the time, I say like everything that is good has happened in my life is because of martial arts. Again, growing up, I had a very, I started martial arts when I was 13, so it's quite young. So growing up, I had a very happy childhood and things, but I had this very, how can I put it, like introverted existence. Like I wouldn't really have many friends and I wouldn't put myself out there. I wouldn't like if there was a homework assignment, I try and do like the least amount of work possible to
Hmm.
just get it done so I could go back to whatever I was into at the time. And basically, um, it changed in the fact that I started making friends, I started going out. You know, I tell people I went to university because of martial arts. I learned how to drive because of martial arts. I was more confident. I'd stick up for myself. I'd speak out. So it's all these what they call like secondary skills or sort of outside skills that started to grow, and especially the confidence thing. I'm always telling people that especially for kids and people like you say with like um, mental health issues, that if you can be confident, if you can strive to do the things that you want to do, you'll be a lot happier. Whereas if you're scared of doing everything, if you're worried about every little thing, you've got a very um, sort of narrow existence where you're not even trying things. Martial arts taught me that I could try things and fail, and it was okay, and not to worry about what people thought of you. All these great things that I know you sort of preach all the time, and all the best martial artists do. But the martial arts for me changed the way I think and the way I handle things. Like the best thing that I tell people is that martial arts is very hard and it builds character, and you don't think you're going to make it. And I say to people all the time, I go like, I feel like I can do anything because I've done this grading, or I've fought 100 people in a marathon, or I've trained this long. It's so transformative. I always say to people, if I could bottle the feeling I have after a class into like a small like shot of a drink, I'd be a millionaire. Like if people could take that drink after a very good martial arts session, I could sell it just to anyone. I'd be the richest person in the world because there is no feeling that I've ever had like it. Like that you feel
Hmm.
it's different from exercise, it's different from anything else. And again, maybe people don't feel the same way, but that's how I feel about it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it is because you're incorporating both mind and body, and you're so occupied with not being punched in the face. There's now no room for thinking about anything else, and it just gives that relief both for body and both for mind. Going into the book, where did the idea come from?
So again, I was in an association that many people are into. We're saying we did the forms, you did these things called one steps, and then you did sparring,
Mhm.
and they wouldn't really connect with each other. And then my second instructor started to show us what the moves were. And I became fascinated with this, and I was always asking him more and more questions. I was like, and this move, what does this move do? And then he'd tell me, and we test it out, and I go, I love this. And I always wanted more from him. I was always asking him for more, more, more. And he kept saying, like concentrate on your basics, concentrate. I'll show you later. I'll show you later. I'll show you later. And I'd be like, great, I'll just keep training and he'll show me. And then he stopped training and stopped being my instructor. And then I was lost. And I was like, oh, I was on this path. I was really enjoying it. And again, it feels really silly saying this now in the day we are, but even about 10 years ago when this happened, I just trained with my instructor. I cross-trained in other styles, but I never went like looking very far. I just accepted this is training, this is that. And then when he retired and I was kind of on my own, I went, I need to find more of this. And the first thing, the thing my instructor was teaching me was this thing he's called Nahanchi fighting. And that's the first thing I typed into YouTube once he retired. I was like, I need to find out someone else who does this Nahanchi fighting. And that's when I found Ian Abernathy. And that's when I started listening to his podcast and going to his seminars. And even though he did karate and I did Tang Soo Do, it just all fit. And I just would explore the movements and I'd say to myself, well, I want to know what every move in the form could be. And I want to test it out. So in my club, even though my association wasn't doing it, because I was very lucky at the time I had my own studio and I had a bunch of senior students who were coming up, we'd go like, let's try this move, let's try that. And then I'd be doing it in other systems. So I'd go to like a Filipino like stick defense class and they'd be doing a movement where they grab the arm and they chop in the throat and I go like that's middle chop and
Mhm.
I'd started to see these things all the time, and I go like it's all connected. And I always say this, but I love Jesse Ancamp's analogy of saying we're all at the bottom of a mountain, and when we're so low at the mountain, we can't see the top of the mountain. As we get up, we start to see other people climbing up, and we start to see other stars, and we get to the top of the mountain, we realize it's all the same. Which obviously I know you know this, but it just came from that journey. So when it came to in my old association for your fourth Dan master's test, you had to write a 20,000 word thesis. And I don't know
Mhm.
what people wrote about. I just heard stories about some people would go like, God, it's a drag. I got to write 20,000 words. And they kind of force themselves to do it. And they'd write it about stuff like injuries or they'd write it some like a policy. And I'd go like,
Mhm.
that seems really boring. So when I wrote my thesis, I was like, well, let's write it on what I'd been exploring. And basically, let's not do the one steps and let's do applications based on the five. I don't know if we call them Pinan or Heian, but we call them Pyong forms, the peace and safety
Pina.
forms. And because all color belts do those forms, and they're like the building blocks of the higher forms. So I said, look, if you had every belt, you learned your form, you had like let's keep it five applications from the form, so not too many. And then each one there'd be an overriding principle, so they kind of connected. And then in our system we have like a solid belt, and we have a like a tag, a halfway point. So at
Mhm.
the solid belt, you learn the moves, and you'd have like 3 to 6 months on that. And then the following 3 to 6 months, you'd have the same moves, but you'd pressure test it. And the pressure test would start very, very easy at white belt. But
Mhm.
by the time you got to black belt, it looked a lot more like real self-defense and a lot more chaotic. So, when I gave that person that black belt, they would be an excellent teacher and demonstrator because any student who'd ask them, what does this move do? What's its function? They can answer it. But also, they'd have a lot of real world self-defense where you probably know black belts and I know black belts where, you see people putting black belts on someone, you go like, that person doesn't they've gone through the movements, they've done everything that's required for them, but if they were ever attacked, I'd be worried about their safety. And one of the things that I've always done is gone like, I don't want my students to get into a self-defense situation, but I
Mhm.
when I put that black belt on them, I go, I don't have to worry about that person anymore. Both in life, they're confident, they're outright they're their own person, they own their situation. But also if they were attacked, I wouldn't worry about it. A couple of years ago, my first black belt, he was attacked 3 times by the same person. And the first time the guy grabbed him, he just disengaged and went, I don't want any problem. Second time this guy ran after him with a stick in his hand and he literally just kicked the stick out of his hand and disarmed him. And then
Mhm.
the third time the guy just wouldn't get in his face. So he did like one punch, knocked him to the floor, and that was it. And I wasn't there, but he said like a load of people had just got out their cameras and filmed everything and said like, wow, you did everything right. You
Mhm.
disengaged, you tried to walk away, And I was just like, you're a model student. Like I just put a big like poster of him and said like, look at our black belt here. Like I didn't want this to happen to him, but he did everything I taught him correctly. And what he
Mm.
said to me was, he said when the guy grabbed him, he said it felt like nothing compared to how we grab each other in class, which is what you want, right? You want that thing
Yeah.
of like you train so hard. So if you were ever in a situation, it it wouldn't have that adrenaline dump of going, oh no, I've never faced this
Mm.
situation before. So that's what I want the pressure test to be. You know, I don't want to kill off white belts, but I don't want to give black belts, you know, the black belt for doing exactly what they did when they were white belt. I want it to be get progressively harder. So it was taking these ideas that obviously I know you know because I've seen you at Abernathy seminars that we all know and structuring them into a solid syllabus that could go alongside the forms that they were learning at the belt anyway. So you get your new form and then you get these applications that match the form. Not that you get your form and then you learn these like 15 one steps that seem random and just like more things to memorize. So I always tell people I'm not making anything up. All the things that I'm teaching are out there in the world. They're very similar to probably what you're teaching your students as well. I've just put it into a syllabus that you know maybe you're in a style that you're a bit confused about what your forms are, or maybe you're an instructor and you want to get into more a practical approach to martial arts, but you're not sure how to start. So it was a two-way guide. You could take it as the practitioner, but you could also use the book as an instructor. So I wanted to be quite universal for everyone.
Cool. You mentioned that wrote the thesis on for your grading.
Mhm.
How that was taken by your organization? Did you have much of a resistance to your approach? Because I know from karate background that people who try to introduce the practical karate and are with a 3K organization, they found a lot of time, not always, but a lot of times, a resistance that, you trying to do something that is not within the lines of the organization. Stop doing that. How that was for you?
So there was a resistance to how I was doing things differently from everyone else, and basically I was very lucky that my instructor at the time, he encouraged me to have a YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel is about like 12 years old. It's quite old now. And it starts off very simple. You know, I put on how to twirl a staff, you know, something that's really simple that someone could follow. And then we'd put on a grading or we'd have a tournament and I'd put you know, like the highlights of it out. Sorry, my dog has just realized that someone's at the door.
That's all right.
Very about someone being at the door. It's probably just a postman or something. And then what happened was I did one of those kicking videos, the Kictionary one, where I just challenged myself to do 200 different kicks. I was like, let's see if I can do this. So I put that video, and then my instructor had retired at this point, and the guy who was in charge then sort of said, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing these videos on these crazy kicks. You should be doing tutorials for basics." And I said, "I'd love to do tutorials for basics. I just didn't know if I was allowed." So I started doing these tutorials for fitness, for
Mhm.
stretching, and for applications. So I'd started to put that out in the world. So my association knew that I did this. Okay. Um, Les, is it okay if we pause this podcast very
Yeah, yeah,
quickly?
sure.
I've just got to move.
It's all
Hello,
fine.
you still there?
I edit it later, so no problem.
Hello,
Hello,
hello.
hello, you back? Can you hear me?
There we go.
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah, we're back. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll take it back a bit. Um, so I made the Kictionary. It had 200 kicks, and my instructor at the time, the guy who took over, he was a little upset, and he said, "These kicks are too complicated. You should be doing basic tutorials." And I said, I'd love to do that. So
Mhm.
I started putting out tutorials on kicks, blocks, punches, but also stretching, fitness, and the application. So I started to put out a couple of these application videos. So when it came to my thesis, they kind of knew that that was what I was into, and I'd been to some Abernathy seminars and other people as well. And then the one thing they asked us to do is to have a mentor. And I knew no one
Mhm.
in my association knew what I knew. So I couldn't really ask anyone there locally. So I asked Ian to be my mentor, and he accepted. And I was like, that's great. And we'd been chatting for years at this point, so he knew what I was talking about, and he trusted what I was doing. But it was nice to have that backup.
Mhm.
And in America they had a council of basically taking the thesis in, and I
Hmm.
gave my proposal, and they said it was too ambitious. And I just laughed at that because I was like, I've been doing this anyway. All I'm doing is really writing it down, what I'm doing
Hmm.
anyway. So I obviously the process took a long time, but I found it quite straightforward because it was everything that I'd been doing for the last decade. And then when it came to handing it in, I needed Ian to sign off on it. And at the time he was having a child, he was very busy, and I felt really bad
Hmm.
about bothering him, but they wouldn't take it in. And I said, Ian, it could just be a couple of words. All you got to do is write something.
Hmm.
They won't accept it without you. And so he said, I'm going to make you a video. And I was like, great. So he sent me the video, and then I uploaded it to a YouTube page, and I handed in this thesis, and they had a submission form, like a job form or something, and it had a limit. I can't remember what the limit was now of how big the thesis was, but my thesis had so many pictures and so much in it that they had to change the upload site because it just was too big. And then I handed it in. They told me I passed that part of the thesis, but on YouTube you can see how many people have seen your videos.
Hmm.
And this was a private link that only they had. So they never even watched the video. So I don't
Hmm.
even know if they read my thesis. I have no idea because soon after that, that's when we left for other reasons. Um,
Hmm.
but they didn't accept it. So I don't know if anyone read it or don't know if they liked it or not. But I was like, it was so good. And one of the things they said was with the thesis, they said there's three things that can happen to it. Either it's no good and they chuck it in the bin,
Hmm.
it goes on the shelf, or it could be published. And when I wrote it, I tried to put as much effort into going, oh, it'd be nice to have it published one day. And then when we left the association about 18 months ago, I said, well, I want to put out the thesis as a book. One of the advice that Ian gave me when I first left my job, he's like, people will take you more seriously if you're published. He said, I
Hmm.
haven't written a book in 20 years, but people still talk about that book that I wrote. So I said, well, I've got a book. And again, I know I do a lot of work with autism. The book I want to write about is the work I do with autism. But I was like, I better write a book about my martial arts first before I do this second book. So that's the idea for the second book. And I took me a year to kind of change the audience and write it to be more universal instead of just writing it for a very specific kind of audience. That's the long answer of did they like it or not? There was a lot of back and forth, but it was one of the reasons why we left because the ideas that I was having weren't meeting with my association, even though, like I was telling them, I'm doing exactly what the old masters would have done, which is to look at the form and dissect it and break it down and try and work out what it's about and use it to be practical.
Awesome. Um, do you got a pictures of the techniques as well in your book, or is it just a frame, or how
So
did
I
you
try
structure
to
it?
make it very, very interactive because I realize that different people learn different ways. Some people like to they read the words and then they can imagine in their head. Other people like to look at the pictures. But one of the things that I've done that other people, I have read every martial art book, but one of the things that I've done that people have told me is quite unique from the books they've read is every chapter has a QR code. So you can
Oh,
actually go to a link and watch the video to see the movements in motion. And I found it's been very useful trying to describe and get over the pressure test because, as you know, pressure tests are chaos, and you
mhm.
can't really show pressure tests in pictures. It would just look like chaos. So the
Yeah.
videos have been very useful in showing how it goes from a very simple pressure test. I think the white belt one is they just grab you and they put a bit of resistance in to the end one where they really go in after you. And the
Mhm.
videos have been very useful for that. So I've tried to make it as interactive as possible for everyone. Again, because I know that people learn differently and people have different ways of taking in information.
That's a huge amount of work to have a video for every chapter. Is that make it
And
your process much longer, isn't it?
Well, I had to do it again because obviously the old videos I did had the old patches on, and we had to refilm it again. So everything had to be done twice. That's what took the
Mhm.
longest time with the photos and the videos and everything. It had to be done again. But I make videos every day, so it was doable. But it's about again. I've got a very good friend of mine who is behind the camera, behind the pictures, Michael. And I always say like without him being behind the camera, it would be nothing because unless it could come across clearly, and I would always ask him, I go like, does this picture look all right? Can you see what's going on? It's it's very important to have people, and I'm very lucky as well with the book. Again, I wrote it as a very set audience, and again,
Mm,
I've never written a book before, so I don't know the process. And another one of my students, Jess, she's very creative, and she's helping me make it look as attractive and accessible as possible. So even though I've written it, there's a team of people behind me who've been supporting,
mhm.
checking it over, looking at having discussions back and forth. So it's a very um, it's been a long process, but I'm really excited about it, seeing the finish line now, going from my computer screen, seeing it every day on my computer screen to actually holding a physical copy of it.
Mm. Are you publishing it with Amazon, or you got a publisher to actually publish it?
So I know you do yours through Amazon, and
Mhm,
I looked into that as well. But I found a local printing company who prints my friend's magazine, and they're going to do a small run for me. So this is why I'm doing pre-sales to find out how many I should get printed
mhm,
before May. And then if someone sees the book and they'd like to publish it, that's fine. But when I was looking down the publishing route, as I've heard you talk about in your podcast, it's very difficult, and
mm,
it causes a lot of problems. Like doing it yourself is just so much easier. I was just pleased to have a local printing company who, they're very reasonable, and they're going to proofread it all before they print it as well, which a lot of places they don't really care. Like they'll just go,
mm.
I'll put out everything. But this publishers, they're really big on like, we'll proofread the whole thing for you and we'll make sure it makes sense. And I've seen the quality of their work is excellent quality, so I'm really excited to
It's
see it
nice.
printed.
It's nice. I think it might work very well for you. I think that, making a connections with local organization is so much beneficial. I didn't found if I found and been in a situation like you, I would probably do my as well printing. What I like about Amazon is that it takes off all the shipping and dealing with people not happy. When you're selling it to the kind of group of friends that people, everybody praise you. But when it's going in the wild world, it's people like, oh, I don't like it. Why did that come in 2 weeks later and stuff like that? Plus, I learned that shipping outside of the UK from home is a bit problematic because they're putting extra taxes on, and I don't know
Mhm.
how much it's gonna be. So like people in Norway getting my book and said, oh, that's another £8 on top of that. And I didn't know that, So it's
Yeah.
a bit of a mess. So in that terms, I like Amazon, but in terms of kind of having a control of your book is a little bit off. It would be nice to work with somebody local who can support us and stuff like that. But maybe in the future. Um, you said you've been working with people with autism. How are you having a group of autistic students in your club, or that was your part of the work before you? I think you are a full-time instructor now, right?
Yeah, so I became a full-time instructor in 2019, so not that long ago. And again, when I did martial arts, no one ever told me you could do this for a living. No one ever told me that. It just got to a point where my club got so big, I couldn't run my dojang, my gym, and work at the same time. It just became untenable. An opportunity came for me to leave my job, and I just jumped at it. And then I really didn't think that I could do the martial arts full time, but it's just worked out, and it's just got better and better as the years have gone on. But one of the things that happened was I would be doing, because I had my own place, I'd be doing private sessions. And I first thought of the private sessions as being for people who did shift work, adults who needed some extra help. I didn't really think it was for children.
Hmm.
And when I was doing my job, I only had about two or three classes a week, and everyone trained together. And the age thing about when someone would start, I'd go, well, it's 7, but the kids need to know their left from right. I was like, I need that because the pace I taught the class at the time. And when they were under sort of 7, I would send them over to another instructor who was like 5 miles down the road, and I go, she's got what we call a tiny tiger class. She's got a 4 to 7 class. Send them over there. And one evening, a mum brought a child to the class, and he was just running around the room like I'd never seen before, and he was making noises like a penguin. And I was like, this kid can't survive in this class. He's not going to be able to do it. And then when I was about to make the speech to her, like, you need to send him to this younger class. She was like, he's 8. He's too old for that class. And I just saw the look in her face. She was just like, I've taken him everywhere. Like, I need a club for him.
Mm,
And I didn't want to send her away. So I just said, well, I could do privates with him to try and
mhm,
help. There's a real, it wasn't planned at all. And then I did some work with this lad, and then someone else heard about what I'd done. So they brought their lad over, they brought their child over to me, and it just kept grew and grew. And this over the next, this started in 2018. So over the next 3 years, this kind of built up. And then in 2021, I was like, right, well, I need a class. So the way I structure it is I start off with what I call a half-hour assessment,
mhm,
see what they need. Do they need more private sessions? Can they go straight into what I call the mainstream class, or do they do what I call my ASD TSD class, which is only 8 students, all ages,
mhm.
and I have a lot of helpers, and it's done at this pace where everything's quiet, everything's slow, very patient. Um, but what I would say is all the students who have stayed with me, massive success. So I often talk about in my videos, I often talk about one of my first students who started with me, Daniel. When he came to me, he tried a class. He's running around screaming, couldn't do it. He did my one-to-one sessions. He progressed to a smaller class, and then he came to the mainstream classes. He came to seminars. He entered tournaments. Now he's one belt away from his black belt, and he's doing the hardest class. And he's actually coming up to the UK martial arts show with us to do the show with us. And he's gone
Mhm.
from someone who couldn't do anything, I couldn't touch him, to doing everything in 5 years. And it's been
Cool.
amazing.
Yeah, I've got my student Danny who pretty much
Yeah,
was the same, so didn't know left from right, although he was an
yeah,
adult. Um,
that's it.
11 years later, he's a black belt now with us, and does everything really complicated, combinations, groundwork, throws, takedowns. He's not, perfect, but uh,
I find it quite
the amount
interesting
of
that the students
amount
are.
of yeah.
Oh, sorry, carry
Sorry,
on, Les.
go.
You kind of cut off for a second.
Yeah, so he put up so much, such a huge amount of work that he fully deserves that black belt, and he can handle himself, I believe. So it is great to see that other people do that kind of work as well, and working with those people, because it's so easy to, like you said, that lady came in and said, "Oh, I've been everywhere." It's so many people just refuse to put their hard work into um helping those people.
Yeah, again, I find it very rewarding. And again, one of the things is that a lot of people tell me is there aren't a lot of people doing what I'm doing.
Hmm.
So again, the idea of the videos I put out, I've put out a couple of videos on how I've helped people with autism, and the things I share are saying I'm not trained in helping people with autism. I'm trained in martial arts. And I'm saying, look, if you've got your own gym and you want to do this, I mean, again, it's not very profitable because you're doing small classes. So I can see why
Hmm.
people who are trying to make money won't be into it. But I'm saying that nothing I'm doing is revolutionary. For me, it's the introduction. And it's the same going back to my situation was because my instructor was very patient with me, I was able to pick it up eventually. And that's what I would say with all my students with any what you call needs or extra attention is that if you can give them the right introduction, if you can give them the right sort of push and go at the right pace, they can do anything that your most accomplished students can. But if you rush them, if you're always saying like we have to grade every 3 months, or you have to be entering these tournaments, you need to be winning, otherwise you're not helping this club. I find that very disheartening. And one of the things we've done since we've left our association is we've managed to put on our own small club tournaments, and we have a ASD division. And it's not about winning medals or anything, but it's about them getting up, doing their forms, having a bit of fun with sparring. And there's always the parents who come and watch, and you can just see the look in the parents' face going, "It's so nice for
Hmm.
my child." And some of them aren't children, they're adults, but even when they're adults, they don't get out much. Look at them interacting, look at them being around other people, look at them growing. And it's wonderful, whether they have autism or not, to see all students get these abilities when they get their belts. It's just to me, it's the greatest gift of teaching, seeing these students go, like you say, when they come in, they don't know their left from right, they can't do this, they can't do that. And then a year down the line, 2 years down the line, they're doing these incredible things that you're just like, wow. And this is one of the things why I film everything. I film all their gradings, I film all their tournaments. I tell my students all the time, especially when you do that thing where you're hitting a wall. I'll say to them, go
Mm.
back and watch your white belt testing. Look how far you've come. Look how much more flexible you are. Look how much stronger you are. Look at all these achievements you've made. Because going forward, like I say, it is always going to get harder. So sometimes it can feel quite daunting. But look what you've achieved. Look how far you've come.
So you changed to a full-time martial artist because of successful uh, group. What's the recipe for successful group? Because I'm struggling, although I'm teaching only adults. Well, I'm not struggling, but it always could be better. What is your recipe for success?
I, Again, like what is seen as success? We had a American master come over last year, and he charges his students like $200 a month. Do you know what I mean? And
Mm,
he's looking at me going, "I'm not successful because I'm not earning a lot of money." My
mm,
thing is that I love martial arts, and I like yourself, I want to help people. So this is why I appreciate sharing things for, I just need enough money to get by. I'm not
mm,
trying to be greedy or anything, but I see success as you see your students growing. Like you're always trying new things. It's one of the things about the book.
mm,
Never released a book before. This is new to me. So that's my own personal journey. So again, they say this thing about, bad instructors just shout and, good instructors show and great instructors inspire. So I'm always trying to put myself out there and say to my students, I'm still learning, I'm still being there. So I'm trying to be a role model for my students. One of the things in Korean that Sabanin means lead by example. So I'm trying to be a good
mm.
example to my students. In terms of growing your class or making your classes bigger, it's very hard. For example, tell me a number that you'd like to get for your club.
So my goal for this year is to have a 50 adults training. I'm at 35.
Okay, that's good. That's not far off at all. So what
Mm,
I found was it's very difficult to get 50 people training together, if that makes sense.
mm,
And as a teacher, like it's one of the things that Ian says about Germany. He said, oh, he'll go over to Germany and there's like over 120 people at a seminar, which is great,
yeah.
but he can't get round to everyone. So my dojang is very small. You can fit comfortably about 25, 24,
Mhm,
25 people in there. But after that, it gets really crowded. And I can't, in an hour and a half, 2 hours, I can't get round everyone. So one of the best advices I had from this guy called Gordon Bertram was instead of trying to get lots of clubs of 50, try and get small clubs of 20.
mhm,
So, for example, I have I do teach kids, so I have a tiny tyke program that's about 25 students. And that's 4 to 7 year olds. Then I have an 8 to 12-year-old program that has about 25 students. And then we have the autism program that has about 16 students. I have a adult junior class that's about 20 students. And I have a senior student that has 20 students. And I have a very advanced sort of black belt level that has 20 students. See what I mean? So I'm not trying to
mhm,
get like 200 students all in the same building at once. I'm doing lots of small classes, but you're teaching all the time. That's the problem. Like I teach a
mhm.
lot. But I have instructors as well who help me. So they take classes as well. So we have about 5 instructors now, and we've just started
Okay.
to have our second sort of satellite club in another town. So that's just started last year, and now they have 10 students. So
Mhm,
it's growing small groups and then building them up. And when the group becomes too big, you go, right, well, this group's too big. We're going to do this twice a week. Um, the main thing is that especially if I find adults coming in, adults will look for any excuse not to walk through the door. So they'll say they're too old, or they say they're out of shape,
mhm,
or they'll tell. So I'm always trying to take away those excuses, and I just want them to try a class. If they come in and try the class and they don't like it, they don't love it, that's fine. They've tried it. But when people tell me like, "Oh, I'm not going to give it a go," um, that's it. And one of the things that we do a lot, and I'm really proud of, is my club. What Tang Soo Do always been about families training together. I
mhm,
always have this pitch that parents who bring their kids in and go like, look, you'll go out for your kids, like you'll go to a fun fair and the kids are having fun and you're not having fun. Or you'll take your kids out for a meal where you're having fun and they're not having fun. I was like, how many activities do you do where all of you, the whole family are having the same amount of fun or enjoying it as much? And I say, when I have families training together, they always tell me, they say, we love training together. We love
mhm.
that. So I know you like to teach adults, but maybe you could have a way of like like a day of your your adults who are training with you bring their kids with them and see what it's like to because you would double your student base just the adults bringing their kids. It's just and I know as well, when Ian would talk about kids classes or probably what you think about kids classes, you just imagine kids running around the room being maniacs. But my kids
No,
classes,
I'm
well,
just not
yeah,
into teaching kids. I don't.
yeah,
I think one of the reasons why I'm more into teaching elderly. So I've got several clubs like it's not 50 people in one club, right? We've got 15 here, 15 here,
that's it.
and there's loads of groups for kids. There's every karate school, every school here. I've got a karate or taekwondo or something, but there's not many things for elderly. They can come in, have a community, do some exercises. So I kind of branch out to that side because I just get on better with that group. As somebody said, I'm older inside than I look. And then I've got that elderly aura apparently, so I just enjoy that better. So it's a kind of on purpose decision to go that route and find and carve stuff.
That's totally fine. But that's the biggest thing. Adults will look for an excuse. You try and take that excuse away from them and get them into the class. And again, once they do it, especially the people who will give you that excuse saying I was too old for this, six months later they'll tell you I feel amazing now. I've lost so much weight. I had this crick in my back. It's gone. We had one lady who came in. She had really bad arthritis, and she said it went with the training. We had another guy who was like 28 stone. In 6 months, he lost 10 stone. There's so many
Mm,
stories I've seen of people who've come in saying that excuse to me at the start, and after they've trained for a bit, they go, I feel amazing. So I always say that martial arts brings out the kid in you anyway. I go like,
mm,
like it keeps you young, it keeps you youthful, doing this thing. So again, is what you consider success is you, but I think you could easily increase from 35 to 50. That's
mm,
fine. One of the things that helped us was running these 4 week courses. And again, it's because you think about like someone who's in their 40s, they come into the class, they stood next to like a 12-year-old, the 12-year-old's doing all these amazing moves and they find it
mm,
really awkward. They can feel embarrassed. Um, so one of the things we did is we started doing these 4 week courses where it was just like first week teach them how to punch, second week teach them how to kick, third
mm,
week teach them how to self-defense, and the fourth week, only the fourth week did I start speaking in Korean and lining up and doing the more traditional things that maybe people are a bit hesitant to walking in. So you get them doing the impact therapy punching, you get them moving their legs, and you go, God, kicking things is fun. You show them a
mm,
bit of simple self-defense like wrist escapes and things like that. And then the fourth class, you put it all together and you go, that's it. That's what white belts do. And then they go, oh, I can do this. And then they sign up and then they fall in love with it. So that's another thing that I've done in the past that's really helped to get over that anxiety of going like, yeah, I don't want to come into a class and look like I don't know what I'm doing. So yeah, we're always trying to make it easy for people. We have a ladies only class. We do that as well. That's one thing we've had before is like ladies going like don't really feel comfortable working with guys, and then eventually they once they know the moves and once they know the routines, they don't care about working with guys. There's that. But there's lots of ways, but I'm happy to anything I know, I'm happy to share with you. And if it
mm.
works for you, that's
Thank
great.
you.
If it doesn't, no offense taken. It's
Mm.
just what works for me, maybe not work for someone else.
How difficult was to make that change, stepping into a being full-time instructor and losing that let's say safety net of a being employed and have that wage coming in every month, and now you don't know tomorrow nobody might turn up and
Yeah. Again, like a lot of people told me, because I was teaching in a college, I had a very stable job. I was on a very
mm,
good income. I could have kept doing this. But one of the things that was heartbreaking for me was I was seeing my martial arts students boom, 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 going up and
mm,
up and up. And the music students I was teaching every year was getting worse and worse and worse. And I was going, well, what's happening? Am I a bad teacher or is it something wrong with the structure of it? So I just wasn't enjoying teaching music anymore under the guidance they gave me. Like I loved music and I loved the way I was teaching it, but it was just something with the way the bureaucracy or the policies or whatever just were getting in the way. And I was like, I'm not enjoying this anymore. So I left, and a lot of people said it was a big jump, like a scary jump. Um, but again, like I told you before, that confidence of,
mm,
of believing in myself and not worrying about failing, I was like, well, I can always get a job again. If it doesn't work out, I can always get a job again.
mm,
I put things in place. And obviously 6 months after I started full time, we had lockdown. So that was even
mm,
scarier, so I had that as well. But the idea is I've always believed that what I'm doing is the right thing. You see what I mean? I've always believed that it's the right thing, and I've always believed that and again, it comes back, it's so cheesy, it's from like the Field of Dreams for whatever. If you build it, they will come. You know,
Mm,
like if I believe it and I'm putting it out there and I'm putting myself out there, that other people will see what I see and they'll want to join this community. And I'm so lucky. And again, you're probably lucky as well that the people who train with you are the nicest people, and the people
mm,
you meet in seminars are the nicest people. And I just tell to all my kids when I teach them, I go like, wouldn't the world be a much better place if we were all nice people? You know, it's just like if martial arts can turn you into a nice person, if martial arts can turn you into a friendly person, then martial arts is the most important thing, and then that's worth doing. So I think my success comes from my unbelievable naivety in the world of how I see it and everything. And I just want everyone to get on and have fun and punch each other, and punch and kick each other and show that they love and respect for that. So that's what I've done. It was very, very scary leaving my job. But after, like now, I don't even remember working in that place. It seems like another person worked there. I
mm,
can't imagine doing anything else. But I'm always really glad I had what we call a proper job or a monthly wage, because now when I'm working towards my business, I have this mentor. I go, if like I work harder,
mm,
I will do better. So it just again it forces me to work harder. So that's the way I look at it.
awesome. Um, in couple of a least amount of words, how would you describe core values for your club? I done this experiment with Hanshi Mark House, who asked me if you boil everything to the least amount of words, what is your
Yeah.
core principle that students coming in and they see the badge on the wall? Um,
So, so we have a motto. I think every gym or every dojo should have a motto. So a
Mhm,
lot of clubs are competitive. Like you got your judo, your kickboxing, your jiu-jitsu, whatever it is. It's about winning. It's about beating people. And my instructor, the very first instructor I had, Chris Long, throughout my martial art training, has always said that competition's with yourself. So I wanted to summarize that in a little thing to write on the wall in the gym. So our motto is master the enemy within, and all others cease
mm,
to be. So everyone's got their own issues, like you say, mental health issues, autism, could be a physical disability, whatever it is. If I can help them overcome that, then they're winning in life. So that's the way I look at it. And then again, the three things I tell people that I'm trying to do with the club, everyone, whether they want it or not, needs to be healthy and fit. You need to be
mm,
strong, you need to be healthy, both mentally and physically. Everyone needs to be part of a community. As we learned from lockdown, being on your own is bad, and training on your own is never as much fun as training with other people. So you need to
mm,
be part of a positive community. So we're promising that as well. And everyone needs goals. Again, like like there's this happiness thing that if you've heard it before, I apologize because I tell everyone, but I think it's really important. There's three kinds of happiness. There's short-term happiness, that's a meal, a roller
mm.
coaster, a night out, very intense but doesn't last very long. There's mid-term happiness, like a job, a relationship. It's got a high, but then it will sort of peter off at some point. And then long-term happiness is a garden. It's
Mm.
very slow. No one else really sees the happiness you have from your garden, but it makes you very happy. And the more work you put in your garden, the more it will grow. And I tell everyone all the time that martial arts is my garden. And I
Mm.
just keep putting more into it. And that way I can be as excited today about doing martial arts as I was when I was 13 years old.
Awesome. That's very good. That's a very good analogy. I like it.
Sorry if it was
Um,
too many words, but that's
no, no, no,
that's
that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, at least it's not, the black belt is the white belt who never gave up, right? Which it seems to be in every gym.
But it's not that either. It's I love being the white belt in the class. Like usually on a Monday, I didn't go today,
Mm,
but usually I do jujitsu on a Monday and a Friday, and I'm the white belt in that class, and I get choked out and strangled by all sorts of people, and I
mm,
love being the white belt in the class because I'm getting the most out of the lesson. When I'm like the black belt and I've seen all this before, I'm like, yeah, I've seen this before. I might take like a nugget of information here or there, but when I'm a white belt in the class, I just go like, I'm gonna get one whole hour of I'm gonna learn loads. So I just love challenges. I love things being difficult, and I keep doing them until I make them. I say it goes from awkward to satisfying. When you learn something
mm,
new in martial arts, and nunchucks is the best thing. When you first start doing nunchucks, you go, "Oh my God, this is so awkward. I'm dropping all the time. I'm hitting myself in the head." But when you see someone really good with nunchucks, they look amazing, and
mm.
it must be so satisfying. Like I've learned it myself, like so satisfying to be able to do that. It's a wonderful transition from awkward to satisfying.
How do you find the BJJ? You're doing BJJ, right? Brazilian
Yes.
or
Yeah.
how do you finding in your young age? I suppose you're kind of similar age to me. I'm doing
Yeah.
BJJ as well. I'm white belt as well, and I'm being tapped out all the time as well. How do you finding on kind of level of putting the effort against the 20-year-olds and surviving the class?
Yeah, again, I love it because for me, I'm actively pressure testing
Mm,
everything I've ever done. So when I'm trying these things, I keep saying to myself, I go, like, striking's really important. Like, it's really hard to put any lock on anyone if you're just trying to manipulate their body. But if I could just hit them
mm,
in the face and move, do you see what I mean? So I always
yeah.
tell my students, well, like, you're never going to put a lock on someone or a throw on someone when they're just standing there. You need
Mm,
to ring the bell first. So you need to be good at striking. But the idea of the the jujitsu is I've got a lot better at surviving. The
hmm.
jujitsu, like it's again, as I get better, it's a lot harder to tap me out.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is what I'm trying to teach. I'm trying to teach survival. So when I go to my students, I go like, look, we're never going to be great grapplers. That's not going to happen. But if I can teach you how to get out of a choke, if I can teach you how to
Mm,
get back onto your feet, these are good skills that I have tested in the jujitsu. There's work for me, and hopefully they'll work for you in a real
mm,
life situation. So I understand that the jiu-jitsu is a sport. All those guys are training to win competitions. I was lucky enough to try a jiu-jitsu competition last year, which is something I never thought I'd do. So that was fun, and I'm trying to do one a year now. I'm going to do one a year just to see how it goes. But again, I love it being so different from what I've done for the past 30 years in terms of striking. And when I do see a connection, like when I see like a move that is from a form that they're doing on the floor that they don't know anything about the form, that always makes me
yeah.
smile. And I go, like, that's that move. Like keep real quiet. That's that move that I've learned. They're doing it. They're doing the move. Like
Hmm.
sometimes my jiu-jitsu instructor, he'll say that he's not he's the least martial arty person. So he'll move his arm across like that and he goes, Gus, what's this called? And I go, that's an out to in block. He's right, right, guys, we're all doing an out to in block to move their arm across. Like that he doesn't care about the name or anything. He just wants to be
Hmm.
functional. So
Yeah,
it's complete
we've got
opposite of the way I was trained.
yeah. One of our the main coach in the academy I am with is other day we've been doing some takedowns and said, do it like Les would do it in Sanchin. Do it
Yeah.
like it's like, oh, you
Yeah.
know something. I'm impressed.
But there we go. It's the opposite. Like again, they're taking the move of like they come up with the move, they make it work, and then they need to have a name for it.
Mm.
That's
And
what a
then we
form
go
is.
from karate and we've got the name for it.
We got the name for it, but we don't know where the name came from or why the name was there. So again, it for me, it's the circular nature of the martial arts. They're doing the same
Mm.
thing, but they're testing it first and then saying we've got a name and a drill and a principle for it. Whereas we're going, we've got a name for it. All right, let's come up with a drill for it. Has it got a principle? Let's pressure test it. So it's a circular thing. And it's not one, two, three, four. It's circular. You can do it in any order, but it's beautiful. I love it.
Mm. What's the future holds for your club, for your books? What's the plan?
Again, I never think that far ahead. Like I tell people all the time that I fall into everything. Even writing the book, I didn't plan to do it. It just happened. So it's all that. Like I said, the plan is that I would love to help more people
Mm.
with helping people with autism because I've seen so many parents who are literally thanking my hand saying, "Oh, my little." Again, I'll just use Daniel because I've mentioned him previously. But Daniel, we'd go out on holiday and he wouldn't play with his cousins. Now he plays with his cousins. Daniel wouldn't sit in assembly. Now he sits in assembly. Daniel's doing really well in school. And it's not just Daniel. I'm just using this as an example. But people would tell me it's changed their lives. Like if I can help more people change their lives to have better lives, then everything I'm doing is worth doing. It's like you've said before, if you can help one person,
Mm.
it's worth doing. And this is about
Yeah.
putting the book out there. It's throwing my hat into the ring and trying to help people who aren't in my immediate area. Because people
Mm.
all, always tell me, especially with the autism, go, man, it'd be great if your club was in Bristol or your club was in Cardiff or wherever, like just out of reach of being worth traveling
Mm.
to me. They'll say that to me. So if I can write a book or help an instructor set it up, I would love to do that. I'd love to help more people through martial arts as it's helped me.
Awesome. Where people can find your book? Where can they pre-order the book? You're not
At
selling
the
it yet.
moment, they can pre-order it from my website. The next
Hmm.
stage now is that I plan to put it on a site like Amazon, so people
Mm.
can organically search for it. Like just type in Tang Soo Do and then find my
Yeah,
books. That's the next stage. That's one of the things I was going to chat to you about, maybe off air. But
sure.
yeah, that's it. And then I'm launching it in the UK Martial Arts Show. You'll be able to go there and get a physical copy from myself at the table, and that's on May 3rd.
Awesome. Awesome. Listen, I appreciate your time. Let's wrap it up, and we can chat about the book stuff of the show. But thank you for your time, and I hope that book gonna be a huge success.
Thank you so much for having me on, Les. Absolute pleasure.